When a mysterious stranger appears at her quiet rural clinic in Ashcombe, Nurse Evelyn Hart's orderly life unravels. The woman, drenched by a storm and carrying secrets too heavy to speak, awakens a longing Evelyn didn't know she had, and a past that refuses to stay buried threatens to destroy the fragile trust blossoming between them. In a village where everyone knows everyone, can love survive when shadows from the past arrive uninvited? The rain had been falling since dawn, thin, silvery threads that blurred the hills and turned the hedgerows into dark smudges against the grey. Inside the small stone cottage that doubled as Ashcombe's rural clinic, Nurse Evelyn Hart folded a blanket over an empty cot and listened to the slow ticking of the wall clock. The day had been uneventful, only Mrs. Weller's arthritic knee and a child with a splinter, but Evelyn preferred it that way. She liked the quiet, the rhythm of teaspoons against china, the smell of antiseptic and lavender oil, the sense of being useful in a world that often felt indifferent. At 4:30, just as she was preparing to close for the evening, headlights appeared through the drizzle. A car she didn't recognize. It rolled to a stop outside the gate, its engine idling, then cutting abruptly. Evelyn frowned. No one ever came this far up the lane unless they meant to. Moments later, the door creaked open. A woman stepped in. She was soaked through, her dark coat clinging to her frame, rainwater dripping from the ends of her hair. There was something almost otherworldly about her, eyes too sharp for a stranger, posture too poised for someone lost. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice low and careful. "I saw the light. I didn't know where else to go." Evelyn hesitated, a mix of caution and instinctive compassion stirring within her. "You're welcome to wait out the storm," she replied softly. "Come in before you catch your death." The woman nodded but didn't move at first. She seemed to be studying Evelyn, as if memorizing her face. Then, finally, she stepped inside. The scent of rain followed her. Evelyn fetched a towel, draping it over the woman's shoulders. "You're trembling. Sit here by the heater." The woman obeyed but said nothing. She stared into the low orange glow, her fingers clasped tightly in her lap. After a long silence, Evelyn tried again. "What's your name?" The woman looked up slowly, her gaze both distant and intimate. "Lena," she said at last. "Just Lena." Evelyn smiled faintly. "I'm Evelyn. Nurse Hart, if we're being formal." Lena's lips curved, almost into a smile. "Then I suppose I should thank Nurse Hart for rescuing me." Something in her tone made Evelyn's pulse quicken, a flicker she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't flirtation, not exactly. More like recognition, as if Lena had found something, or someone, she hadn't meant to. Outside, the rain thickened. Inside, time seemed to pause between the crackle of the heater and the soft hush of breath. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt the quiet wasn't comforting. It was charged, alive, with something unnamed. She didn't yet know it, but the night Lena walked into her clinic, the careful order of her life began to unravel. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a pale, wet world. Mist hung over the hedgerows like breath. The village of Ashcombe stirred to life beneath a thin wash of sunlight. Evelyn brewed tea in the small kitchenette of the clinic, the scent of Earl Grey curling through the air. She hadn't slept well, fragments of the night kept circling in her mind, the stranger's silence, her shiver, her eyes that seemed to hold whole oceans of grief. When she returned to the front room, Lena was still there. Curled in the chair by the window, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, her hair now dry and slightly tangled. She looked almost peaceful, but Evelyn sensed it was a fragile kind of peace, like the stillness before something breaks. "You're up early," Evelyn said gently. Lena turned her head, her lips twitching in a faint, almost apologetic smile. "I'm not used to sleeping in strange places." "Understandable." Evelyn set a cup before her. "Tea. And toast, if you're hungry." Lena's eyes softened. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," Evelyn interrupted, more quickly than she meant to. "It's no trouble." They shared breakfast in near silence, punctuated only by the sound of sparrows tapping at the window. After a while, Evelyn asked, Were you headed somewhere before the storm? Lena hesitated. No. Not really. A pause. Then quietly, I was leaving something behind. Evelyn waited, but no further explanation came. There was a tension there, not defensive, but protective. Whatever had driven Lena here, it was wound tight inside her, hidden beneath layers Evelyn didn't yet dare to peel back. When the morning light grew stronger, Evelyn walked to the door. The roads will be clear now, she said softly. If you'd like, I can give you directions to the main road. Lena didn't answer. She looked out the window instead, toward the rolling hills washed clean by rain. Finally, she murmured, would it be terribly inconvenient if I stayed a day or two more? Evelyn blinked, startled by the quiet hope in the question. She should have said no, the clinic was hardly an inn, and she had patients to see, routines to keep. But instead she said, there's a spare room at the back. You can stay as long as you need. Lena turned to her, and in her eyes flickered something almost grateful, almost afraid. Thank you, Evelyn. The sound of her name from Lena's lips did something strange to her chest, a subtle tightening, a warmth she didn't want to name. That evening, the village lights twinkled in the distance, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth and wood smoke. Evelyn watched Lena from across the room as she helped fold linens, her movements graceful but deliberate, as if each gesture had been rehearsed. Have you ever worked in a place like this? Evelyn asked, curious. Lena smiled to herself. No. But I've spent time in hospitals. Visiting. Evelyn nodded. Family? Lena's eyes flickered downward. Someone I loved. For a moment, silence pressed between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with the weight of what wasn't said. Then Lena added softly, she's gone now. Evelyn wanted to reach across the space between them, to touch her hand, to say something kind, but something held her back. Instead, she said, I'm sorry. Lena gave a small nod. So am I. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, night settled over Ashcombe again, and the sound of rain returned, gentler this time, as though remembering. Evelyn realized then that the woman she had let stay in her clinic was not just lost. She was haunted. And what frightened her most was how deeply she already wanted to understand why. The following days slipped by like mist, soft, half-real, and impossible to hold. Lena stayed. Evelyn told herself it was only temporary, that the stranger would leave once the weather turned or the roads dried. But somehow, Lena lingered, helping sweep the floors, fetching water from the well, folding fresh linens as though she belonged there. The villagers began to notice. Mrs. Weller, with her endless gossip, remarked one morning, "You've got company these days, Nurse Hart." "A friend, is she?" Evelyn had simply smiled. "A guest, Mrs. Weller." "Just a guest." But she'd felt the live flutter in her chest like a bird against glass. At night, Evelyn often found herself listening to Lena's footsteps down the narrow hall, the sound of her moving restlessly, as though haunted by dreams. Sometimes Evelyn would rise and find her standing by the back door, staring out at the moonlit fields. "You can't sleep?" Evelyn asked once, her voice a whisper in the stillness. Lena didn't turn. "Some nights feel longer than others." Evelyn stepped closer, her bare feet silent against the floorboards. "Would you like something to help? Chamomile, perhaps?" Lena shook her head. "No. I'm afraid what keeps me awake isn't the kind of thing tea can cure." The way she said it made Evelyn ache in a place she hadn't known could ache. She wanted to ask what kind of thing, but the air between them was fragile, one wrong question, and it might shatter. On the fourth morning, a letter arrived. It was addressed to L. Moore, care of Ashcombe Clinic. Evelyn hesitated before handing it to her. "I didn't know you were expecting post," she said quietly. Lena looked down at the envelope, her expression unreadable. "Neither did I." She took it and disappeared into the small back room. Minutes later, Evelyn heard the faint rip of paper, and then silence. When Lena reappeared, her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. She dropped the torn envelope into the stove, watching it curl and blacken in the flames. Bad news? Evelyn asked softly. Lena didn't look at her. Old news. And that was all she said. That evening, a storm rolled over the hills, thunder shaking the window panes. The lights flickered, and Evelyn lit a lantern. Lena was sitting by the hearth, her hair catching the firelight, eyes distant. Evelyn crossed the room. "You don't have to stay here alone," she said, her voice barely audible above the wind. "If you'd rather." "I'd rather stay," Lena said quickly, meeting her gaze. There was something raw in her voice, fear, or maybe longing. Evelyn hesitated, then sat beside her. The silence between them was electric. The storm outside seemed far away compared to the storm quietly gathering inside the little clinic. "Whatever it is you're running from," Evelyn said finally, "you don't have to be afraid here." Lena turned toward her then, eyes shining in the flicker of light. "And what if I'm not running from something?" she whispered. "What if I'm running towards something, and I don't even know what it is yet?" Evelyn's breath caught. Outside, thunder rolled again, but neither of them moved. Lena's fingers brushed against Evelyn's hand, tentative, trembling, and unbearably real. For a heartbeat, Evelyn thought she would pull away. But she didn't. She let it happen, the touch, the warmth, the truth of it. And though neither of them said another word, both knew something had shifted, something quiet and irreversible, like the turn of a tide. The morning arrived pale and soft, as though the night itself had bled gently into day. Mist hung over the fields like gossamer, and the distant hills shimmered with dew. Evelyn awoke to the faint smell of toast and brewing coffee, the small kitchen humming quietly with routine. But something in the air felt different. Lena was already awake, standing by the window with a mug in her hands, staring out at the waking village. The soft light caught her hair, turning it to burnished bronze, and Evelyn felt that familiar, unbidden tightening in her chest. "Good morning," Evelyn said, stepping into the room. Lena looked at her, a small, almost shy smile curling her lips. "Morning." They stood there for a moment, the silence neither awkward nor empty. It was pregnant with possibility, a fragile, flickering intimacy that neither had named aloud yet. Breakfast passed quietly, their words sparse, filled with the kind of careful politeness that hides far more than it reveals. But Evelyn found herself stealing glances at Lena, the way she sipped her tea, the gentle curve of her shoulders, the faint tremor in her hands when the steam rose. Finally, Evelyn could not resist. "Lena," she began, her voice low, hesitant. "Do you have to leave soon? Or, will you stay a while longer?" Lena's eyes met hers, steady, and Evelyn felt the weight of unspoken truths passing between them. "I don't know," Lena admitted softly. "I don't know how long I can stay, or how long I want to." The words were a confession and a challenge all at once. Evelyn wanted to ask more, but she also wanted to wait, to let Lena speak in her own time, to earn the story behind the shadowed eyes. That afternoon, the two women walked along the narrow country lane, the mist curling around their ankles and soft earth muffling their footsteps. The air smelled of damp grass and wildflowers, and for a while, the world felt suspended, held in the delicate quiet of early light. Lena stopped at a bend where the hedgerows opened to a view of the valley below. "I used to come here," she said, almost to herself. "A long time ago." "Before." "Before what?" Evelyn asked gently. Lena looked away, her hair catching the light. "Before things went wrong. Before I lost someone I loved more than I thought I could bear." Evelyn waited, silent, letting the words hang. When Lena finally turned to her, the vulnerability in her eyes was raw, and Evelyn's heart ached. "I don't want to be haunted anymore," Lena whispered. "Not by the past. Not by anyone. Not even myself." Evelyn reached out, brushing a strand of damp hair from Lena's face. "Then maybe, you don't have to be," she said. "Not here. Not with me." Lena's lips parted, hesitant, and for a heartbeat, Evelyn feared she would turn away. But instead, Lena leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, a whisper of warmth and possibility. It was not the storm of passion found in novels or films, but a careful, deliberate reaching, a promise in the quiet country morning. When they finally parted, their foreheads rested together, breath mingling, hearts thrumming in quiet sync. "I'm not used to this," Lena admitted, her voice barely audible. "Neither am I," Evelyn whispered. And yet, in that shared hesitation, they both understood something profound, the fragile beauty of beginnings, the dangerous wonder of surrender, and the silent truth that love, when it finds you unexpectedly, can alter the course of your life forever. Outside, the mist began to lift, and the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days. Evelyn and Lena stayed by the valley's edge, letting the light touch their faces, letting the moment linger, the first light illuminating not just the world, but the fragile, burgeoning connection between them. The following week brought a hesitant calm. The rain had ceased, leaving the countryside washed and glistening. Evelyn moved through the clinic with her usual rhythm, but now there was a quiet awareness at the edges of every task. Lena's presence lingered like a second heartbeat in the room. Lena had settled into a fragile routine, helping with small tasks, walking the hills in the late afternoons, and sitting quietly by the fire in the evenings. She laughed sometimes, small and fleeting, but there were moments when the shadows returned, darkening her eyes, and Evelyn felt the weight of something unsaid pressing against her chest. It was on a Thursday morning, during the shift change, that the first real complication arrived. A woman from the neighboring town came to the clinic. She asked for Lena by name. "She's here?" Evelyn's voice was steady, though her stomach dropped. "I believe so," the woman said, her tone polite but sharp, carrying an edge Evelyn couldn't quite place. She glanced at Lena, who had appeared silently behind Evelyn. The moment their eyes met, something in Lena stiffened. Recognition. Fear. A flicker of panic Evelyn had never seen before. The woman stepped closer. "Lena Moore?" she asked. Lena's lips pressed into a thin line. She shook her head faintly. "That's not me," she said quietly. The woman's eyes narrowed. "I think it is. You left without explanation. I need to know." Evelyn's hand shot forward, touching Lena's arm gently. "Excuse me," she said firmly. "She's under my care. Please, whatever this is, let's step outside." Lena's eyes met Evelyn's, wide and vulnerable. A silent plea. She trusted Evelyn, and somehow that trust was as heavy and fragile as glass. Outside, in the quiet of the courtyard, Lena finally spoke. "It's her," she whispered. "The one I promised never to see again." Evelyn waited, sensing that whatever story Lena carried was more than a passing complication. She could see the history etched into Lena's posture, the way her hands trembled, the way her eyes darted to the corners as if haunted by ghosts. She's dangerous," Lena said. "Not to you. To me. To anyone who gets close." Evelyn's heart clenched. "Then you need to tell me. Now. If we're going to." "I can't," Lena cut in, voice shaking. "Not yet. You don't understand. There are things I've done, things I've run from, and if I tell you, you'll leave. You'll have to." Evelyn searched her face, wanting to argue, to plead, to promise safety, but she didn't. Instead, she said softly, "Then I'll stay. I don't care what the past holds. I'll stay." Lena's breath hitched. For a long moment, she seemed to be weighing whether Evelyn's words were truth or folly. Then, finally, she nodded. A fragile truce, built on the tenuous bridge of trust. That night, they sat together by the fire. Lena's hand found Evelyn's without hesitation, resting lightly, almost fearfully, as though the contact itself might shatter. "I don't know how much of me you can bear," Lena said at last, voice small. "But I want you to know, whatever comes, I'm not going anywhere." Evelyn squeezed her hand gently. "Then neither am I." Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of rain-soaked earth. Inside, the fire flickered, illuminating two women bound together by quiet courage, fragile trust, and a love that had begun in the midst of storm and shadow. For the first time, Evelyn understood that love in its truest form was not safe, not easy, but it was worth every risk, every secret, every shadow. And somewhere deep inside, Lena knew the same. The morning fog clung to Ashcombe like a living thing, curling around the hedgerows and the worn stone paths of the village. Evelyn wrapped her coat tightly around her shoulders as she stepped outside, the chill biting at her skin, and spotted Lena already walking along the lane, hands tucked into the pockets of her soaked coat. "Lena," Evelyn called softly. The mist swallowed her voice, but Lena paused, turning with a faint, almost fragile smile. "I like the fog," Lena said, her voice distant. "It hides things. Makes the world softer, gentler." Evelyn fell into step beside her. "Or it makes you feel lost," she said. "But maybe that's not always bad. Sometimes being lost is the only way to find something worth keeping." Lena's eyes met hers, sharp and searching. For a moment, the mist, the fields, the world beyond disappeared. Only their breath, visible in the cold morning air, seemed to exist. "I should tell you," Lena began, voice trembling, "why I came here. Why I ran." Evelyn's hand brushed against hers, a silent encouragement. "I'm listening." Lena's gaze fell to the damp earth. "I was involved with someone. Someone I loved more than I can explain. But things went wrong. Terribly wrong. And I made choices I regret every single day." Evelyn stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "You don't have to explain all at once. Just tell me what you can. I want to understand, not judge." Lena's hands twisted in her coat pockets. She was my partner. And I failed her. I left when I shouldn't have. I thought running would fix it, but it didn't. It just brought me here. To you." Evelyn's heart thumped painfully. She wanted to reach out, to touch Lena's cheek, to tell her that guilt and fear had no place in this new fragile bond. Instead, she said softly, "You're here now. And you're not alone." Lena swallowed, her throat tight. "I don't deserve this. You shouldn't have to." Evelyn cut her off with a gentle brush of her hand over Lena's lips. "Stop. Don't tell me what I should or shouldn't do. I'm here. I choose to be here, with you." For a long moment, Lena seemed on the verge of retreating, but Evelyn's steady presence anchored her. Slowly, cautiously, she leaned into Evelyn, resting her forehead against hers. "I'm afraid," Lena admitted, voice barely more than a whisper. "So am I," Evelyn said. "But love isn't about being fearless. It's about being willing to take the risk anyway." They walked the rest of the lane in silence, the mist curling around them, softening the edges of the world. When they returned to the clinic, Lena lingered at the doorway, glancing at Evelyn with something unspoken in her eyes. "Stay with me tonight," Evelyn said. "Not because you need protection, but because I want you near. Because I can't stop thinking about you." Lena's lips curved in a small, trembling smile. "Then I'll stay." That night, by the flickering fire, Lena finally allowed herself to rest, her body close to Evelyn's, their hands intertwined, hearts beating in quiet unison. Confession had opened the door, and now vulnerability became intimacy, a slow, tender revelation neither had expected, but both had silently yearned for. Outside, the mist thickened, wrapping the world in softness. Inside, warmth blossomed, fragile, fearless, and fiercely alive. And for the first time since Lena arrived, both women allowed themselves to believe in the possibility of a future together, even if the shadows of the past lingered just beyond the mist. Lena swallowed, her throat tight. "I don't deserve this. You shouldn't have to." Evelyn cut her off with a gentle brush of her hand over Lena's lips. "Stop. Don't tell me what I should or shouldn't do. I'm here. I choose to be here, with you." For a long moment, Lena seemed on the verge of retreating, but Evelyn's steady presence anchored her. Slowly, cautiously, she leaned into Evelyn, resting her forehead against hers. "I'm afraid," Lena admitted, voice barely more than a whisper. "So am I," Evelyn said. "But love isn't about being fearless. It's about being willing to take the risk anyway." They walked the rest of the lane in silence, the mist curling around them, softening the edges of the world. When they returned to the clinic, Lena lingered at the doorway, glancing at Evelyn with something unspoken in her eyes. "Stay with me tonight," Evelyn said. "Not because you need protection, but because I want you near. Because I can't stop thinking about you." Lena's lips curved in a small, trembling smile. "Then I'll stay." That night, by the flickering fire, Lena finally allowed herself to rest, her body close to Evelyn's, their hands intertwined, hearts beating in quiet unison. Confession had opened the door, and now vulnerability became intimacy, a slow, tender revelation neither had expected, but both had silently yearned for. Outside, the mist thickened, wrapping the world in softness. Inside, warmth blossomed, fragile, fearless, and fiercely alive. And for the first time since Lena arrived, both women allowed themselves to believe in the possibility of a future together, even if the shadows of the past lingered just beyond the mist. The wind howled through Ashcombe that evening, rattling windows and bending the hedgerows as though warning of a coming storm. Inside the clinic, Evelyn moved quickly, tending to a sudden influx of patients who had slipped and fallen on the slick country roads. Yet her thoughts kept drifting to Lena, who sat silently by the fire, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the dancing flames. Evelyn approached her. "You've been quiet all day." Lena didn't look up. "Quiet is safer," she said. "For now." Evelyn crouched beside her, resting a hand lightly on Lena's knee. "We've been honest about some things," she said gently. "But I need to know, what are you really running from?" Lena flinched, pulling her hands back, a shadow crossing her face. "Some secrets," she whispered. "Secrets I swore I'd never speak of again. But they've caught up with me. I can't outrun them anymore." Before Evelyn could respond, the door banged open. A figure stepped into the room, the same woman from the neighboring town, sharp-eyed and insistent. "Lena Moore," she said, voice edged with authority. "We need to talk. Now." Lena froze. Her composure cracked for the first time. "I told you, you can't." "Enough," the woman said, ignoring her plea. "This ends tonight." Evelyn rose instinctively, standing protectively in front of Lena. "She's with me," she said firmly. "Whatever you came here for, you'll speak to me first." The stranger's gaze flicked between them. "You don't understand what's at stake," she said, voice low but tense. "If she doesn't come, lives will be ruined. Including hers." Lena's hands shook. "I didn't want this. I never wanted anyone else to get hurt," she whispered. Evelyn stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from Lena's face. "Then trust me," she said softly. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. I'm not leaving you." For the first time, Lena's defenses faltered completely. She sank into Evelyn's arms, trembling, whispering pieces of her story through shuddered breaths. A love that ended in betrayal, a promise broken, someone in danger because of her choices. Evelyn listened, holding her steady. Each confession was a crack in the armor Lena had built around herself, and each one drew them closer, binding them with raw honesty and fragile courage. By the firelight, with the storm raging outside, Evelyn realized that love wasn't only about warmth and comfort. It was about standing together in the heart of the storm, unafraid of the secrets and shadows that came with it. Finally, Lena pulled back slightly, eyes wet but resolute. "I don't know how this ends," she said. "But, thank you for staying." Evelyn smiled faintly, brushing a thumb across her cheek. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Together." Outside, the wind and rain battered the village, but inside the little clinic, two women clung to each other, their hearts beating in defiance of the chaos beyond the walls. And in that fragile, unshakable bond, they found something neither had expected: hope. The storm had passed. The morning sun spilled over the rolling hills, setting the dew-laden fields aglow with gold. The village of Ashcombe stirred slowly, birdsong filling the quiet spaces where rain had once roared. Inside the clinic, Evelyn moved with calm efficiency, the rhythm of her duties steady and familiar. Lena sat at the window, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, watching sunlight scatter over the hills. The tension that had gripped her the past week, the fear, the secrets, the shadow of danger, had lifted, leaving a fragile peace in its place. Evelyn approached quietly. "You're quiet," she said, slipping into the chair beside her. "I'm thinking," Lena admitted, voice soft. "About everything. About you. About what it feels like to finally be allowed to stay." Evelyn smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Lena's face. "You don't have to run anymore," she said. "Not here. Not with me." Lena's lips curved into a tentative smile. "I want to believe that," she said. "I want to try." The days that followed were gentle, almost dreamlike. Evelyn and Lena walked the country lanes together, hands intertwined, laughing softly at trivial things, discovering the rhythm of each other's lives. They shared quiet breakfasts by the fire, lingered over tea in the afternoons, and let their conversations drift toward hopes, fears, and small, unspoken dreams. In the evenings, the clinic became their sanctuary. Lena would read aloud from books she carried, passages that resonated with their newfound intimacy. Evelyn would watch her, tracing the curve of her jaw, memorizing the tilt of her head, marveling at how someone could enter your life so unexpectedly and yet feel like home. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Lena turned to Evelyn. "I never thought I'd feel safe again," she whispered, "but with you. I do. I feel alive in a way I haven't in years." Evelyn took her hands, holding them tightly. "Then stay," she said simply. "Not just for now. Stay with me, and let's see where this goes." Lena's eyes glistened in the fading light. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against Evelyn's. "I will," she promised. The world outside could wait. The shadows of the past could fade. Here, in the soft light of Ashcombe, two hearts had found each other, fragile, resilient, and unafraid to grow together. By the window, the hills rolled endlessly into the horizon, kissed by the first light of hope. Evelyn and Lena sat close, wrapped in a quiet understanding, in the shared knowledge that love, once it takes root, can bloom even after the fiercest storms. And as the evening settled over the village, Evelyn realized that the unexpected arrival of a mysterious stranger had given her more than companionship. It had given her the chance to love fully, fearlessly, and with a heart wide open. For Lena, the quiet nurse of Ashcombe, this was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The morning sun spilled warmly over the hills, golden light painting the village in soft hues. Birds sang from the hedgerows, and the gentle hum of Ashcombe waking filled the air. Evelyn stood at the doorway of the clinic, arms wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. Beside her, Lena leaned lightly, head resting on her shoulder. There was a quiet ease between them now, a rhythm born of trust, laughter, and the shared scars of the past. "You've got tea," Lena murmured, reaching for the cup. "And that smile you always wear when the world is too calm." Evelyn chuckled softly. "Some things never change," she said. They stepped outside together, walking the familiar lanes hand in hand. The field stretched endlessly, dew sparkling on grass, the wind gentle and warm against their faces. The village, small and unhurried, seemed to breathe along with them. "Do you ever think about when you first arrived?" Evelyn asked. Lena smiled, eyes glinting with memory. "Every day. I was so afraid, and yet I found you. I found home." Evelyn tightened her grip on her hand. "And I found you." The two women paused at the crest of a hill, gazing at the rolling countryside. Their hearts beat together, steady and certain. No past could undo what they had built. No shadow could reach them here, in the quiet of Ashcombe, where love had taken root. Lena leaned into Evelyn, letting herself be anchored in warmth and trust. "I never thought I'd have this," she whispered. "A place to stay. someone to stay with. Evelyn brushed a thumb across her cheek. You have both, she said. And you always will. They walked back toward the village together, the sun climbing higher, illuminating the path before them. Every step was a promise, of laughter, of tenderness, of mornings and evenings shared, of a life lived fully and without fear. In Ashcombe, amidst the rolling hills and quiet streets, Evelyn and Lena had found more than love. They had found each other. And that was enough. As the storm finally passes over Ashcombe, Evelyn and Lena face the fragile truth of their love, built in stolen moments, whispers, and shared fears. But even in the quiet aftermath, shadows from the past linger, threatening the life they've begun to build. Will their bond survive the secrets that follow them, or is some love too dangerous to endure?